homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now let's continue with the Bodhicharyavatara, ocean of good explanations. Although I haven't read the commentary word for word, I've actually explained all the key points to everyone very clearly, so you should be able to receive the full transmission. I heard that some Dharma friends here have said, Khenpo won't give us the transmission of the ocean of good explanations anymore. They say this with tears every day. Well, I'm just guessing, maybe no one is crying. I have already explained the change in my way of teaching very clearly to everyone. So it's not that I won't teach the content of the commentary, but to save time and make things easier to understand, I haven't read the commentary out loud, word for word. But I've explained all the main points and the outline. Earlier, I already explained the power of regret in this section. Now we're reflecting on the terrifying nature of death to give rise to the mind of refuge. This is explained in both a brief and a detailed way. In the brief explanation, we've already covered 2 verses. Today, we'll discuss the last verse in the brief explanation. The verse goes like this: Protectors, I have carelessly committed numerous misdeeds for the sake of this ephemeral life. Oblivious there is such a danger. The meaning of this verse is, as ordinary beings, we are often extremely careless and heedless. We never really understood how terrifying death actually is. So, for the sake of this impermanent, fleeting body, for this illusory body, we have committed all sorts of negative actions. In the Tibetan text, this verse contains a heartfelt invocation, a direct calling out to the protector. The meaning is that, as we discussed earlier, when a person is dying, all their friends and family are of no help at all. The only thing that can help is the virtue of practicing the Dharma. This virtue is truly beneficial at that time. But for someone as ignorant as myself, I haven't managed to do this. So there's a deep sense of self-reproach and regret. At that time, I realized that I really hadn't practiced well in this life. So I call out to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, protectors, please, you must save me. Whenever we encounter great trouble or difficulty, we always look for something or someone to protect us. Here, it's saying that we are often in a state of heedlessness and carelessness. As we all know, with our body, speech, and mind, we have never really practiced properly. We are always in a state of distraction without mindfulness and awareness. So we don't engage in practice. Every day passes by in distraction. This is what is meant by heedlessness. What kind of heedlessness? Most people today live like this. Every day we are endlessly busy with all sorts of things, and most of what we say is not very meaningful. Even our thoughts and mental chatter have little real value. We spend our days in a kind of fog. But in reality, this way of living is not meaningful for ourselves, nor is it meaningful for others. Many people, in fact, spend their whole lives this way. So, for someone as heedless as myself, I never really understood how terrifying death actually is. Everyone knows that one day we will die, except for a few animals. All humans know this. I know for sure that I will die one day. We have this certainty about our own mortality. But when death actually comes, what will it be like? What kind of fear will I experience at that moment? At the time of death, the 4 elements dissolve and there is intense suffering. This is something many people may not have known before. After death, all sorts of terrifying Bardo visions immediately appear. Many people are completely unaware of this as well. After the period of the Bardo stage, if you've created negative karma, you immediately fall into the 3 lower realms. The suffering in the lower realms is long and intense. Its suffering is truly beyond words. It's excruciating and extremely hard to bear, almost unimaginable. Such suffering and misery, I used to know nothing about any of this. In the past, I was completely ignorant of all this. Why didn't I know? On one hand, it may be due to the environment we grew up in, whether it's the geography or the culture. These factors all play a role. And on top of that, our beginningless ignorance and delusion that's closely related to. At the same time, we're always distracted by external things. Most people today only focus on their immediate goals in this life. We only care about the present moment. Other than that, we make no preparations for future lives, nor do we reflect on the past. I once read a book called Living in the Present. It's a worldly book, and it says life is just what's in front of you, just the present moment, about the here and now. Everything in the past is just history, and the future is completely uncertain. No one can say what will happen in the future. So for many people, life is just about the present, and that's how most people live today. Apart from the present moment or the pleasures of this life, eating, drinking, having fun, they make no plans at all. Most people in the world actually live like this. In the past, we really had no idea just how terrifying the moment of death could be. So just for the sake of this impermanent composite body of the four elements, we create all sorts of negative karma, unimaginable, unforgivable, and truly frightening negative actions. I think most of us here have now become monastics, but before ordaining, perhaps just to survive or to get by, many of us committed all sorts of unimaginable negative karma. Some people, for the sake of survival, killed many living beings. Some may have joined criminal gangs, some have entered brothels, and some run restaurants where the killing of sentient beings is routine. There are all kinds of situations like this. Even now, among those who study Buddhism, many still don't really understand how frightening the future can be. If you truly understood what's to come, you probably wouldn't be so willing to create negative karma. But because people don't know, because of this ignorance, they end up creating all sorts of frightening negative karma just for the sake of this impermanent body. Today, someone shared this with me saying, I am a very devoted lay practitioner from Guangzhou. That's how he described himself. He told me, I feel that through studying Buddhism, I finally found my life's purpose, and I'm truly happy. I'm pursuing this path wholeheartedly, and I'm very clear about it. But when I think about all the negative karma I created in the past, I realize I made so many mistakes. Sometimes when I remember, I feel a real sense of fear. I am so grateful that now I woke up a little earlier in life. From now on, I'll never turn back. I will definitely practice diligently and make a real effort. Honestly, I think many of us here can relate to this feeling. Right now, in this world, if you haven't started studying the Dharma, if you haven't truly taken refuge, who knows when you'll finally wake up? You might just keep creating negative karma over and over, not to mention anything else, even just eating seafood, eating living beings, just that alone. How much negative karma have we created in this life? Some people here, some practitioners, have told me, I don't feel like I've achieved anything in my practice. I feel so sad every day. Here's how I see it. It's good enough that you are practicing sincerely every day, even if you don't have any big achievements, even if you haven't grown wings and flown up into the sky. Maybe you don't have that kind of accomplishment yet. But compared to your old life, your old way of life, whether it was day or night, there was hardly any virtue. Every day was spent creating negative karma. If you look back honestly at your life, you should be able to see this clearly. Maybe you don't have any extraordinary accomplishments now, no miracles or supernatural powers to show off in front of others. Still, overall, I can say that your life has changed in a fundamental way, and I believe that this kind of change is a real accomplishment in practice. Some people may get bored with the familiar. Recently, we've been sharing Dharma teachings and making DVDs here. When people bring them home, they say, now the real Dharma from the Academy has come into our homes. They're so grateful and happy. Many people feel this way. If you can keep this kind of faith for a long time, I believe it will definitely bring positive changes to your life. In fact, learning the Dharma is a process of transformation and renewal. What are we transforming? We're transforming the old patterns of creating negative karma in our lives. In the past, we lived carelessly every day, spending our time talking about trivial things, doing things that don't have much real value, and feeling empty day after day. Now, we've changed that, making our lives more meaningful and fulfilling. This is what it means to study the Dharma. It should truly benefit you. So I hope that every practitioner should not live the same way as before. If your way of life hasn't changed at all, then your practice really isn't going well. Just look at the Dharma friends. Here, almost all 24 hours of the day are spent studying the Dharma. Some people start the day by memorizing texts, then practice meditation, and after that, diligently read books. After meals, they listen to teachings, then attend group study sessions. After group discussions, they go back to practice and memorize more texts. So the whole day is spent immersed in the Dharma. But for many lay people outside, I think it's probably difficult to devote all their time like this. In our academy, if someone spends an hour or two shopping, they feel like they've wasted a lot of time. They think, I just wasted an hour or two. They often feel this way. But in the cities, if they spend an hour listening to the Dharma, they feel like it's a huge accomplishment and tell everyone about it. They'll say, I listened to the Dharma for an hour today. How amazing. They may even fax their friends abroad to share the news. They just want to share their devoted studies with everyone. Of course, I don't think this is a bad thing. It's actually good. The most important thing is that people are starting to change. In the past, you wouldn't even spend 5 minutes listening to the Dharma, let alone an hour. But now, if you can spend an hour or even half an hour a day, your life will definitely start to change. And if your life changes, I believe that's real practice. If nothing changes and you're just the same as before, just listening to a bit of Dharma or reading a few books, but your life and actions don't change at all, then it may not really be of benefit to your spiritual progress. Of course, when we try to practice virtue, we often encounter many obstacles. The Buddha also said this in the sutras, when we do good, obstacles are many. When we do evil, conditions seem to be favorable. The Buddha explained this very clearly in the scriptures. When we try to practice virtue, obstacles often arise. Sometimes our health isn't good. Sometimes work doesn't go well. Sometimes there's disharmony in the family. This is actually a common pattern. For example, when we study the Prajnaparamita Sutras, the deeper our understanding becomes, the more obstacles Mara will create for us because he is displeased. If you're always creating negative karma, Mara is delighted and will make everything go smoothly for you. For example, if you run a slaughterhouse or a business that harms sentient beings, or you're involved in activities that create negative karma, Mara is especially pleased. Especially in these degenerate times, the power of the Dharma protectors, the positive power is relatively weak, while the forces of Mara are very strong. So all the retinues of Mara will come to support you in creating negative karma. Some practitioners may wonder, why is it that before I started practicing, my health was always good, but ever since I started practicing, I've been sick all the time? The Prajnaparamita Sutras also explain this. The deeper your understanding of prajna, the more obstacles you'll face from both humans and non-humans alike. For example, before you started practicing, your family might have been harmonious. But once you start practicing, your family members and friends may start to oppose you. It can feel like you have more and more adversaries, but actually this means your practice is progressing. So don't be discouraged by this. Any real accomplishment requires effort and even struggle. It's only through overcoming challenges that you gain real progress. This is something a famous hero of the past has said. I won't go into details here. But overall, when we practiced the Dharma in the past, we really did create a lot of negative karma for the sake of this impermanent body. Now, we must sincerely confess all the negative karma we've created in this life, whether it was for ourselves, for our loved ones, for the sake of our own livelihood. We really have created a lot of negative karma. If we don't confess now, as we discussed before, if we die before we have this chance to purify our negative karma, we won't get another chance to purify it. So we must confess wholeheartedly and make the vow never to create such actions again. This is the essential meaning of the brief explanation above. Now let's move on to the detailed explanation. The verse says, if people who are being led to have their limbs chopped off today look different than they did before with their parched mouths and bloodshot eyes, what need to say how wretched I'll be when Yama's henchmen have me seized, their physiognomies dire and dread, and I am gripped by terrible pain. Here, an analogy is used to illustrate the point made earlier. That is, when we enter the Bardo state after death, we will experience intense fear. But what kind of fear is it? The text uses a worldly analogy to help us understand. Imagine someone who has committed a crime and is being led to the execution ground. As they are taken to the place of execution, at that moment they are absolutely terrified. You can see it in their expression. Their mouth is dry, their eyes are bulging, changing, their face is completely changed, they look nothing like they did before. This is how it is for people in the world when they are led to the execution ground. They feel this kind of fear. In the same way, if you've spent your whole life creating negative karma, when you reach the Bardo state, you will encounter truly terrifying, fierce messengers of Yama, the hell guards. When these hell guards come at you, armed with various weapons, how could you not be afraid? Of course, you will be absolutely terrified. The pain and fear at that time are truly beyond words. Of course, this analogy can be explained in two ways. One is the situation where someone commits crimes, but not enough to receive a death penalty. Generally, when someone commits offenses that aren't particularly serious, he might be penalized with physical punishment, for example, chopping off his hands or feet. Although he might not receive the death penalty, he still needs to experience extreme physical torture. In this case, when he is sent to the execution ground, he would certainly look different than before. Even if he might be heroic, brave, and full of high spirits in the past, but when he's taken to the execution ground and his limbs are chopped off with knives, as says in the verse, then he must look extremely scared, which we can see from his expressions. He will definitely feel frightened. Well, according to some commentaries, this verse is explained from the perspective of someone being executed. When someone receives the death penalty, no matter who they are, they will feel intense fear at that moment. Now, there are different ways of execution in today's world. Likewise, in some ancient countries, for example, ancient Rome, India, and Egypt, they also had their own ways of executing prisoners. Many of these methods were extremely cruel. For instance, it's said that some would cut the prisoner's body into pieces with a knife, all while the person was still alive. The execution required exactly 3,375 cuts to the body. So the executioner would cut the prisoner's body a specific number of times. If the prisoner died before all the cuts were made, it was seen as a sign of poor skill on the part of the executioner. The goal was to subject the prisoner to such agony before their last breath, such a brutal practice. In other parts of the world, there used to be similar brutal executions. There was a method involving drilling a hole in the prisoner's skull first, then placing a red-hot iron ball into the opening. When the hot iron was inserted, the prisoner's brains would start to bubble, spurt, and overflow until the prisoner dies because of this. So there used to be all kinds of cruel methods of execution in the world, but overall none of them is bearable. I have personally witnessed some death penalty cases before. Some people, when sentenced to death, simply cannot stand up. Their arms and legs go completely limp and they are unable to stand. At that moment, their whole demeanor and expression are truly pitiful. Just looking at them, you feel a deep sense of pity. Of course, the execution ground is a place of ultimate fear for a lifetime, but if you are already so terrified in that situation, when you reach the Bardo state after death, that fear will be multiplied many times over. Why is that? Because in the Bardo state, beings in the Bardo have extremely sensitive and fragile perceptions. Their feelings are very sharp, but also extremely delicate and vulnerable. On top of that, the hell guards of Yama are 7 times taller than ordinary people. Or just in appearance, they are extremely frightening. They hold all sorts of terrifying weapons in their hands, and they shout earth-shaking cries from their mouths, yelling things like kill and beat and so on. Such a cruel scene is simply unbearable for anyone. Even a small punishment or minor sentence in this life can make you very afraid. So imagine, when you reach the Bardo, how could you possibly endure the horrors of that state? It's simply unbearable. Some people might wonder, is there really such a thing as the Bardo? Do we really have to go through this? There's no doubt about it. This is what the Buddha himself taught. The Buddha is a truth speaker, a real speaker, one who does not deceive. In this world, the only person with valid cognition is the Buddha. The Buddha has explained this in many different sutras. In the exoteric sutras, for example, the Agama sutras explain this very clearly. They describe the experiences of the Bardo. And in the Ksitigarbha Sutra, there are also some descriptions of the states of the Bardo. Of course, in Vajrayana Buddhism, texts like Instructions on the Bardo Liberation, Instructions on the Bardo, describe the Bardo state that one will experience in great detail. So for any of us, it's impossible not to go through this. Everyone will go through it. I really think sometimes that in some ways we Tibetans are a bit more fortunate. No matter who they are, they always believe that good brings good results, bad brings bad results, and that after death everyone must go through the Bardo. This idea is instilled from childhood and remains until the end of life. Even if their practice isn't great or they create negative karma, this basic belief never changes. But for others, it may not be like this. Some people may still wonder, is it really like this? Will it really happen? A German psychologist once said, doubt is the best way to seek the truth. So maybe these people are the most remarkable. They doubt absolutely everything. When His Holiness traveled to Western countries in the past, he found that some people there were very intelligent, but their faith in the three jewels was not very strong. When the Lama gave teachings, their expressions were often quite indifferent. On the surface, it was as if they were just listening to a lecture or a report. There was no real look of respect or devotion in their eyes. That was missing. And whenever the topic of the Bardo came up, they would question this and doubt that. But when it came to real debate, using logic and reasoning, they couldn't give any sound reasoning. They just refused to accept it. Some people here have the same problem. On one hand, maybe it's because from childhood, we never received any Buddhist education in this area. But if you don't accept even these basic Buddhist principles, then I think there's not much point in studying Buddhism at all. In all the definitive sutras, the Buddha clearly taught about this life, future lives, and the Bardo. Even when we study the Abhidharma Kosha, this point is also clearly explained. Whether it's the Hinayana, Mahayana, or Vajrayana, all the teachings describe these experiences. The 6 Bardos are explained in great detail. If you don't accept even this, then you shouldn't accept that you did have dreams at night either. And when you wake up in the morning, the experiences of the daytime and this life, you shouldn't accept those either. So I think you still need to engage in hearing and contemplation. If you don't, your doubts will never be resolved. If your doubts aren't resolved, you'll always be half believing, half doubting about the Bardo. You'll wonder, does the Bardo really exist? Is it just a legend? Is it just a folk tale? If you have this kind of attitude, you'll never truly enter the path with a sincere heart. If you don't approach with a genuine heart, your practice will never be truly diligent or effective. You won't practice the Dharma sincerely. Therefore, I often feel that I really admire the people of Tibetan regions. Even though their living conditions are quite poor, and their transportation and many other aspects are not as good as other places, their pure faith and understanding of karma and cause and effect often surpass that of many other peoples. So their simple and genuine right view is something I truly admire and rejoice in. Back to our topic, everything we've discussed today at the time of the Bardo, there really are many terrifying visions that appear. These will appear before us. So regarding this point, if we haven't prepared or taken precautions now, when that time comes, what will we do? Everyone should reflect on this. Even if it's uncomfortable to hear, like preparing for an exam, it's not pleasant, but it must be said. As someone teaching the Dharma, I have a responsibility to say this. Not long ago, a fellow Dharma teacher from America called me. He suggested to me, when you teach the Dharma to others in the future, try not to talk about precepts so much. People find it uncomfortable, it feels restrictive. You should talk more about merit and positive qualities. At the time, I replied, the Buddha taught us that we need to teach both the rules and the benefits. Otherwise, it wouldn't be quite right. He said, here in the West, people don't like to hear that you can't eat meat, can't get married, that you can't do anything. People don't like to hear that. So you should talk more about merits, about how doing good deeds brings blessings and wealth. In some ways, I think what he said makes sense. People today don't want to hear about falling into hell after death or breaking precepts. People really don't like to hear that. But whether people want to hear it or not, I don't think we should ignore or hide these teachings. It's not right to only talk about the good and never mention the bad. For example, if a teacher only tells a student what's good and never warns them about the bad, that student could easily end up breaking the law. If you never mention the dangers, it's very risky. It's dangerous not to talk about it. So whether you want to hear it or not, if all we talk about is merit and blessings, I don't think that's truly beneficial. So sometimes we need to ask ourselves, do we have a sense of fear? In this life, maybe I have created a lot of negative karma. When I'm about to die, will all the negative karma I've created appear before me? For example, if I killed tigers, lions, yaks, and so on, if I have killed many sentient beings before I even close my eyes, I may see these visions. They may come to attack me, to eat me, to torment me. I will experience suffering, so what will I do at that moment? Everyone should be prepared in two ways. I think this is really necessary. Here, it's saying that at the time of death, there are truly terrifying visions. Now, let's go a step further in the explanation. Who will protect me truly from this horrifying danger? I'll cry, eyes bulging with terror, as I search in the four directions for a refuge. But seeing no protection in the four directions, I'll then despair. If there's no refuge in that place, what will I do at such a time? This means that if we have created all sorts of negative karma, when the time of death comes, who will be able to protect us? Who can help us then? When you encounter the terrifying visions of the Bardo or the horrors of the lower realms, who will be able to save you then? When the dying person is overwhelmed by terrifying hallucinations, they open their eyes wide and look in all directions, their eyes bulging in fear, desperately searching for someone to save them. No matter how hard they look, they can't find anyone who can truly help. At that moment, no one can help. At the time of death, you can see how much pain and sorrow there is. The dying person can do nothing, and neither can anyone else. In the end, when there's truly no way out, the person feels deep regret, fear, and sorrow in their heart. Sometimes we see this in hospitals. I once saw someone who had just received a critical condition notice from the hospital. When the patient realized it, they were overwhelmed with sadness. They clung to the doctor, refusing to let go, and crying, "Doctor, please save me. I don't want to die. Please save me. I want to keep living." At the same time, they cried out to their parents, "Dad, Mom, I really don't want to die." But the parents were helpless too. "Son, you can't die. Please don't die. Doctor, don't let him die." Everyone is clinging to each other, weeping and pleading. But does any of this help? No, it doesn't. When death truly comes, whether it's the doctor, your family, or anyone else, no one can do anything. For some people, especially those with heavy negative karma, at the time of death, they are extremely unwilling to die and are filled with fear. They search everywhere for someone to save them, but they can't find anyone anywhere. There's no way to escape this danger, and as a result, the mind is filled with deep regret and fear. There's also a sense of despair and helplessness. In the end, with no support or refuge, they have nowhere to turn. The Buddha taught this in the Sutra of Instructions to the King as well. In that sutra, the Buddha gave the same teaching to a king. Whenever you have the chance, read some authentic Buddhist sutras, especially the Sutra of Instructions to the King, which explains the Bardo in great detail. There's a Tibetan version as well. It describes exactly what happens at the time of death. You can't take anything with you, as we discussed before. The Sutra of Instructions to the King says the same thing. When the terrifying messengers of Yama surround the dying person has no idea what to do. They open their eyes wide, searching in all directions for someone to save them. But no matter where they look, they can't find anyone. They are truly helpless, unable to find any savior, and with no one to turn to, not knowing where to go. This is what is called the Bardo. This is also explained in the Sutra of Instructions to the King. What is taught in the Sutra of Instructions to the King is exactly the same as the verses in the Bodhicharyavatara. So don't think that the Bodhicharyavatara or Tibetan Buddhism is just making this up. Some may wonder, I've never heard this in Han Buddhism. Just because you haven't heard it doesn't mean it isn't true. If you had really studied all 84,000 teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, then you could say, I've never heard this, and that would be a reason. But out of all the sutras in the Kangyur, how many have you really studied? There are hundreds you haven't read. Don't think that just because you haven't heard it, it doesn't exist. If I haven't heard it, it must not be true. Other sutras also teach the same thing. When a person is close to death and facing terrifying visions, at this time, only virtue can truly protect them. No other refuge or support can help at that time. This is also confirmed in other Buddhist scriptures. So when we truly reach the end of our lives, when we are in the terrifying bardo, our own state of mind and our practice are what matter most. If we haven't practiced, we'll still be very afraid at that time. If we haven't developed that kind of realization, we'll still be terrified when the time comes. Some people might think, It should be fine, because all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have boundless compassion and inconceivable miraculous powers, strength and wisdom. So even if I haven't practiced well now, when I reach the Bardo, surely Amitabha or Buddha Shakyamuni will come to save me. There should be no problem. Some people may think this way, but it actually depends on the merit and connections you've accumulated. While you're alive, you need to form a connection with Amitabha and with Buddha Shakyamuni, reciting their names and praying to them often. You must create a positive connection. If you don't, even though the Buddhas are infinitely compassionate and powerful, they still can't save you. I've mentioned this before. There's a good story in the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom that illustrates this. Once, when the Buddha was in Shravasti, Venerable Ananda was with him. Ananda saw a very poor and pitiful woman nearby. At that time, Ananda said, "Buddha, please, you must save this poor woman." The Buddha replied, "She has no karmic connection with me at all. She has neither faith in me nor any karmic link, so I cannot help her." Ananda didn't quite believe this. He kept pleading again and again. Finally, the Buddha agreed to try as Ananda requested. You see, even the Buddha sometimes appeared to listen to his attendant. These days, some lamas don't use their own wisdom, but just listen to their attendants, who get caught up in all sorts of worldly affairs. So the lama ends up involved in worldly matters too. This can happen. At that time, the Buddha agreed to Ananda's request. He went to the poor woman, but when he approached her, she refused to look at the Buddha's noble and beautiful face. She immediately turned away, showing her back to the Buddha. No matter where the Buddha appeared, she kept turning away. The Buddha manifested in all directions, but she just closed her eyes and refused to look. Wherever the Buddha appeared, she turned away. If he appeared on that side, she turned back again. She was so resistant that she just closed her eyes and wouldn't look anywhere. Finally, the Buddha displayed miraculous powers, appearing in all directions and above and below. But the woman just closed her eyes tightly and refused to look anywhere. Ananda finally realized that even a fully enlightened Buddha cannot help a being with whom there is no connection. The ornament of clear realization also says, even though the Buddha's activity is effortless and spontaneous, without the right conditions, even the Buddha cannot liberate all beings. For example, when the king of the gods sends rain, if the seeds have been burned, they will never sprout. In the same way, if beings lack the right conditions, even if the Buddha appears in the world, he cannot liberate them. That's why Maitreya also explains this in the Ornament of Clear Realization. The point is, if you don't genuinely practice the Dharma now, and instead place all your hopes on your teacher or the Buddha, this won't work. You may think, when the time comes, they will definitely save me. I don't need to practice seriously now. I'll just focus on worldly matters, running my factory, building my business, starting new projects. This is my priority right now. I'll make offerings to the 3 jewels after I get rich. But for now, I have to focus on my worldly projects. If you keep living like this, then at the time of death, not only your gurus, even if the Buddha himself appears before you, he won't be able to save you. So whether in the Bardo or in this life, what truly matters is to have genuine faith in the Buddha and the 3 jewels. With strong and sincere faith, I believe that no matter what kind of death you may encounter, you won't be afraid. We can see this, whether someone dies at home or in a hospital. Some people pass away very peacefully. This shows that they have practiced while they were alive. Others, no matter where they are always extremely afraid of death. As practitioners, we shouldn't be afraid of death, but we also shouldn't just wait for death or seek it out. Instead, we should face death with a sense of calm and acceptance. When the time comes, we can apply the pith instructions we've learned. Just as we discussed yesterday, I think this is something that many great masters in Tibetan regions have demonstrated very clearly. Some great masters refuse to stay in a hospital at the end of their lives. When they feel that death is near, they prefer to return to their monastery. Once, Khenpo Shime Rigzin and I went to visit Khenpo Kiwang from Nubzer Monastery. He said that recently he had gone to the hospital and felt he might not live long. He didn't want to die in the city, so he came back. He said it's much better to die in the monastery. He would be very joyful and at ease. Just a few days later, he passed away peacefully, so they just don't want to stay and die in a hospital. They prefer to remain in their own meditative state. even if they do die in a hospital, it's not the same as for ordinary people, because those who have practiced virtue all their lives have nothing to fear when death really comes. When their life is spent preparing for death, what is there to fear? They have spent their lives preparing for death, just like Milarepa once said. At first I was terrified of death, so I went to the mountains to practice diligently. Now I have no fear at all. I have complete confidence about life and death. He's not afraid at all, just as he said. Some great masters are like this. For example, back in 1981, the 16th Karmapa passed away in a hospital in the United States. An hour before he passed away, or half an hour before his passing, he sat up in bed, and the doctors and nurses asked if he was in pain. He replied, "No, not at all." He kept talking and conversing right up to the end. Then he passed away peacefully. The American doctors and nurses at the time said, "We've seen many people die in this hospital, but we've never seen anyone like this." They found it truly remarkable and said, "This person is really a saint." I think when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche passed away, it was also very auspicious, as many of you know. It happened on January 7th, 2004. For us, that day was a day of great sadness and loss. It was a painful and difficult day. But for His Holiness, as a yogi who had mastered life and death, it was a peaceful transition. That morning at about 9:40 a.m., he passed away. Around 8 a.m., he sat up and recited from beginning to end the liberation through wearing practice he had worn all his life. He finished the entire practice. After that, from 9:30 a.m. onward, he sat up, gazed into space, and passed away peacefully. The doctors and many others present felt that even now they had never seen a patient like this in their hospital. Honestly, sometimes I think not just these great masters and accomplished beings, but even some ordinary practitioners, their way of dying is completely different from that of ordinary people. If you prepare for death and future lives while you're alive, then when death comes, you won't be afraid at all. Even in the Bardo, or whatever state you encounter, for you, it will feel completely natural and normal, just like moving from one place to another. It's just like all you need to do is pack your bags for the journey. Other than that, there's nothing to worry about. I didn't see it myself, but I heard that Dharma King Ngawang Yonten Sangpo of the Jonang tradition, when he was in Beijing and terminally ill, spent his last days reading Dharma texts very peacefully and then passed away. So some great masters really do die differently from ordinary people. Even in our academy, there are some practitioners with no fame or status, but when they pass away, some pass away in the sleeping lion's posture, some pass away sitting upright, and for some, various signs of accomplishment appear on their bodies after death. So, when it comes to the great matter of life and death, Buddhism truly has a unique quality. This is something we should have unwavering faith in. Why is it so? Because these are the Buddha's own words. If you practice properly, these signs will naturally appear. In this respect, it is truly different from worldly people. Worldly people are often filled with pain and fear, and after death there is much wailing and crying. After someone dies, the sound of crying can fill the air. I've seen this before. In Tibetan regions, there was a very famous Dakini named Lingza Chokyi. She had a well-known account of her experiences in the Bardo. In her Bardo memoir, she described, at first she had what we would now call a near-death experience, so she died suddenly. After her death, she found herself in another place. She saw a pig sleeping in her own clothes, and others wouldn't give her food, which made her very upset. Then her father called out to her, and she followed the sound of his voice. Then somehow she ended up in the Bardo realm. At that time, some of her children were crying behind her. As they were crying, she felt as if pus and blood were pouring down on her body, causing her tremendous pain and suffering. Then one of her lamas abided in the luminosity of mind, and that brought her indescribable joy. She merged her own mind with the wisdom of her lama. Later, she also saw the Bardo River, the Bardo Bridge, the Lord of Death, Yama, and so on. She saw all these experiences, and then she woke up. After regaining consciousness, she would often bring messages from the Bardo to the living. In Tibetan regions, everyone knew her story. She was very famous. Everyone had heard of her. From her experience, we learned that after someone dies, it's best if the family doesn't cry. crying actually has a negative effect on the deceased's state. Sometimes if the family cries loudly, the Bardo being who was abiding in their meditative state may become distracted by attachment. Just as they were about to be reborn in the Pure Land, the crying could pull them back. This kind of situation does happen. So when elders or family members pass away, it's best not to cry loudly. Otherwise, when they are about to be reborn in the Pure Land, your loud crying could prevent their rebirth there. Of course, after someone dies, it's good to dedicate merit, do virtuous deeds, and release lives on their behalf, especially if there are teachers with realization in the great perfection, and they abide in that state. It brings immeasurable benefit to the deceased. In short, when we practice the Dharma, we should always be prepared for our future lives. This is extremely important. Next, let's talk about the objects of refuge. There are two aspects: taking refuge in the common three jewels and taking refuge in bodhisattvas with great power and aspiration. First, the verse says, "Thus from today I'll go for refuge to the victors, guardians of beings, who strive to protect all wanderers, those with great power who dispel all fear." The meaning of this verse is that in the entire world, the Bardo is truly terrifying and future lives are full of fear. Is there anyone in this world who can truly protect us from these fears? There isn't. As we discussed a few days ago about refuge, people try all sorts of ways to escape these difficulties, but in reality, none of them work. It's all in vain. The only true protector is the Buddha, who is great in compassion. He is the refuge and protector of all sentient beings. With great compassion, the Buddha diligently cares for all sentient beings. His power is completely different from that of ordinary beings or even bodhisattvas. He has the ability to dispel all fear and suffering in this life and in future lives. So all of us should take refuge in the Buddha. From today onward, we should take refuge. Whenever we hear the Dharma, we should immediately take refuge. Khenpo Kunpal once said in a commentary, I forget which one, I don't have time to look it up now, but I remember it said, "If you hear the Dharma in the morning, take refuge in the morning. If you hear it in the afternoon, take refuge in the afternoon. If you hear it at night, take refuge at night." The at night part is my own addition. Having this kind of attitude is really important. Some people, after hearing the Dharma, think, it's fine, I'll take refuge next year, or in a few years, or after I retire, or when I'm old, or after my children grow up and graduate. But by then you may not have the same faith you have now. So the earlier you take refuge, the better. Don't keep putting it off. If you keep delaying, it's like the Tibetan saying, the resolve you have at night is gone by morning. Today you may feel renunciation and want to take refuge, but after a while, that feeling may fade. So when you have faith in the Buddha, don't ask your father, don't consult your mother, don't tell anyone, just take refuge right away. No matter what your family or workplace says, no matter what difficulties they create, don't worry about it. Why? Because taking refuge in the Dharma is truly the most important thing in a person's life. If you have taken refuge in the Dharma, all the major matters of your life are already resolved. If you haven't accomplished even this, it's truly a great regret for your whole life. In the most important sense, the Buddha, the embodiment of great compassion, is truly the refuge of all beings. Whether in Mahayana, Hinayana, or any tradition, the Buddha is perfect in all qualities of abandonment and realization. No other being, whether a worldly sage, a universal monarch, or a god, no matter how extraordinary, can compare to even a fraction of the Buddha's qualities. No worldly hero can compare to the Buddha. So in this world, the Buddha is the only true refuge for beings. He is the one with valid cognition and the only one who can bring both temporary and ultimate benefit to beings. A true refuge is one who can completely protect beings. This protection isn't just about helping you through temporary difficulties. It's about complete liberation from samsara, and the Buddha's great compassion has been present. From the moment of his aspiration all the way to enlightenment, he has always worked for beings, wishing all to be free from suffering and attain happiness. Of course, when he was a bodhisattva, there was effort in his causal state, but at the level of fruition, his activity is effortless and spontaneous. The Buddha's protection is spontaneous and uncontrived. The Buddha doesn't have to think, I must benefit beings every day, or I must be diligent, I must get up early, I must help many beings today. There's no such contrived effort, even without effort. As the result of 3 countless eons of accumulation, when he attained Buddhahood, his activity became effortless and spontaneous. So it all happens naturally. This is also explained in the introduction to the Middle Way. The Buddha knows what is true and what is not, and so on. He possesses the 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 unshared qualities, and many other unique qualities which give him the power to truly relieve the suffering in the mind streams of sentient beings. No Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha has this ability. So from now on, let's not hesitate. The only true protector is the Buddha. Some people are very devoted. They know that the Buddha is the one who reveals the truth of the universe and tells the method of dispelling the suffering of the 3 realms. To see the Buddha in this way, to hold this view, is good. We must recognize that only the Buddha awakens beings from ignorance. Only the Buddha can dispel all our suffering. There is no suffering the Buddha cannot remove. If you have this kind of faith, that faith itself will be effective and truly work for you. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche also used to say that the Buddha's qualities are perfect. There is nothing he cannot do. But the key is your own faith. If you have faith, there is no suffering the Buddha cannot remove. There is nothing that cannot be overcome. His Holiness once told a story about Khenpo Jamyang's experiences in Lhasa. Khenpo Jamyang was leading a group of people on pilgrimage to Lhasa. On the way, they encountered bandits and robbers. The bandits demanded that they hand over all their possessions. Everyone in the group panicked and was terrified. People tried to run and hide, but at that moment, Khenpo told them, "Running away won't solve anything. It won't truly protect you. Instead, we should wholeheartedly recite the Buddha's name." Then he himself went and sat on a large open rock and prayed to the Buddha with complete devotion. The bandits became very angry and started shooting at Khenpo, but when they fired their guns, there were only faint bullet marks on his clothes. He was completely unharmed. He wasn't hurt at all. The bandits were so frightened and amazed that they all ran away. In the end, they just scattered and fled. So His Holiness said, when we encounter our greatest fears and suffering, and the one thing we should do is pray to the Buddha. Let the Buddha protect us. If you have this kind of conviction, there is no suffering the Buddha cannot remove, no fear he cannot dispel. Whether it's in the Bardo or at any time, as we learned in the Pure Land teachings, when you are most afraid in the Bardo, pray to the Buddha, to Amitabha, to Buddha Shakyamuni, or to your root guru, seeing them as inseparable. With this kind of devotion, you will definitely be liberated from fear. So if someone takes refuge in the Buddha with single-pointed faith, they will never fall into the lower realms. The Buddha himself said this in the sutras. Whoever takes refuge in the Buddha will never fall into the lower realms. Yes, there is such a teaching. Anyone who takes refuge in the Buddha will never fall into the lower realms. So at the time of death, can you give rise to the thought, I take refuge in the Buddha, the only true refuge in this world? If you can truly generate this thought in your heart, then all your fear and anxiety will be immediately resolved. However, if you don't have this thought or devotion, when you face the pain and fear of death, you'll wonder, what should I do? Is there any other way? Some people, when they encounter the greatest difficulties, are always looking for other solutions. That just shows their faith in the Buddha isn't strong enough. As Buddhists, we must have faith. If you don't have faith, even though the Buddha's power is inconceivable, it may not work for you. Last year, when we studied the words of my perfect teacher, it said that with the highest faith and devotion, you receive the highest blessings. With medium faith, you get medium blessings. With lesser faith, you get lesser blessings. If you have no faith or devotion at all, then even though the blessings of the 3 jewels are immeasurable, you won't receive any benefit at all. So for all of us, taking refuge in the 3 jewels is extremely important. Taking refuge shouldn't just be a formality. If it's just for show, it's meaningless. The other day, some people called me and said, we're still studying the Bodhicharyavatara. I said, it's best not to just study for appearances. Otherwise, it really doesn't mean much for you. And for me, honestly, it's a kind of a waste of resources. I don't need empty reputation. What I want is for you to study sincerely. Even if only one person studies sincerely, I'm very happy. If you're not truly sincere and just sign up for the numbers or just add your name to the list, it's better for you to just focus on your worldly affairs. You have so much worldly work to do anyway. For me to keep giving guidance every day is just unnecessary. It's best not to make it just a formality. Let it be something real and meaningful. What does real mean? It means that from your heart you have genuine faith and respect for the three jewels. As it says in the Sutra of Recalling the Three Jewels, the Buddha possesses 4 kinds of power. If you truly develop this kind of faith in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, it will bring immeasurable benefit and merit for all your future lives. The benefit and merit are beyond words. So, as someone seeking liberation, who wouldn't long for this? Everyone will naturally aspire to it. So in the end, I want to emphasize again that faith is truly important. I wanted to say more, but we're out of time. We'll stop here for today. Thank you all.
Bandara Badna Sadardang Bandara Badna Sadardang Bandara Badna Sadardang